Everything we thought we knew about Avengers Endgame was a carefully constructed illusion. What if Tony Stark's heroic sacrifice wasn't just the ultimate act of love for humanity, but also a calculated execution designed by none other than Doctor Strange himself? What if the man we mourned as the savior of the Marvel Cinematic Universe was actually destined to become its greatest villain? A threat so catastrophic that even Thanos would pale in comparison. These aren't just wild speculations. When we re-examine the 14,6015 possible futures Doctor Strange witnessed, his cryptic actions, his suspiciously perfect timing, and connect it all to the terrifying possibilities opened in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, a chilling theory emerges. Tony Stark wasn't meant to live because, had he survived, he would have transformed into the most dangerous figure the multiverse has ever known, a variant of Doctor Doom. Ask yourself, why did Strange insist there was only one singular path to victory out of millions? Why did he give Tony that haunting look before the final battle, signaling the one outcome that required his death? And why, when we later see Strange wielding unimaginable powers and defeating cosmic threats on his own in alternate universes, does it suddenly feel like he didn't tell us the whole truth back in Endgame? If Strange was capable of taking down Thanos himself, as evidenced in Multiverse of Madness, why wasn't that part of the one way? The answer is painfully clear. The true danger was never Thanos, it was Tony Stark. This is where the puzzle pieces connect. Strange's vision of the future wasn't just about defeating the Mad Titan, it was about protecting the multiverse from something far worse. Imagine the genius of Tony Stark, combined with his relentless ambition for control, amplified by the trauma of the snap, and his near brush with omnipotence. Imagine if Tony had survived, armed with the knowledge of the Infinity Stones, the ability to outthink gods, and an obsession to ensure peace by any means necessary. That isn't the story of Iron Man the Savior, that's the origin story of Doom. Let's return to the battlefield on Titan, where Strange closes his eyes and surrenders to a vision of millions of futures. He sees 14 million branching paths, each with unique decisions and ripple effects across time. He doesn't just see Thanos winning or losing, he sees what happens after. He doesn't just see Tony fighting, he sees Tony becoming. And that's the terrifying secret. In most of those futures, they defeat Thanos, but the cost is watching Tony Stark rise into something monstrous. We must remember something crucial about Tony Stark. He was always teetering on the edge of savior and tyrant. From the moment he created Ultron, we saw glimpses of that darker path. He wanted a suit of armor around the world, protection at any cost, control over chaos. Ultron was a failed attempt, but what if it was only a preview of the deeper destiny waiting within him? Strange, as the keeper of the Time Stone, could see the fullness of that destiny. He could see Tony stepping into a role not of a fallen hero, but of a ruler, a conqueror, a man who finally solved the equation of control, not by protecting humanity, but by dominating it. That is the essence of Doctor Doom. The evidence becomes even more compelling when we consider Multiverse of Madness. We are shown universes where Strange himself defeats Thanos, where victory didn't require Tony's sacrifice on Tony's death. The answer is simple. It wasn't about beating Thanos. It was about eliminating Tony before his transformation into Doom became inevitable. Strange wasn't just saving the universe, he was pruning a branch or possibility, cutting off a future where Tony Stark's brilliance and obsession spiraled into multiversal tyranny. Skeptics might argue that Doom is Victor Von Doom, not Tony Stark. But the MCU thrives on remixing and reimagining iconic characters. Just as Sylvie is a variant of Loki, and He Who Remains is a variant of Kang, why couldn't Doom be a destiny that wears Tony Stark's face? Variants are not bound by a single identity. A Tony Stark from another universe, shaped by different choices and traumas, could absolutely walk the path to becoming Doom. Think about Tony's psychological profile. His entire arc was defined by a fear of failure and an obsession with control. He could never stop tinkering, upgrading, and preparing for the next threat. What happens when a man with that mindset survives an event like the snap? The survivor's guilt, the trauma of wielding godlike power, the knowledge that he alone could end threats before they begin. Would that Tony be content to rest, or would he return to his old habits? What happens when his obsession with ensuring safety mutates into a belief that only he should decide the future? That is not Iron Man anymore. That is Doom. Strange's interactions with Tony throughout Infinity War and Endgame support this. He doesn't treat Tony like a friend, he manages him. Remember when Strange coldly stated he would not hesitate to let Tony or Peter Parker die to protect the Time Stone? In hindsight, it feels like a foreshadowing of what Strange already knew: Tony was not meant to survive. And when Tony asks, "Tell me this is the one," after the snap, Strange doesn't lie, he just raises a single finger. No words, no reassurance. Why? Because words could have changed Tony's path. Strange knew that knowledge could spark rebellion. He had to keep Tony in the dark until the last possible second. This reframes Tony's death entirely. What fans saw as a heroic sacrifice was, through Strange's lens, a necessary containment. The only way to prevent Doom's rise was to let Tony burn himself out with the stones. Strange didn't just allow it, he engineered it. Tony's snap wasn't just destiny, it was an execution. But here is the most haunting part: what if Strange only delayed the inevitable? The multiverse is built on variance, and for every Tony who dies a hero, another might live and walk a darker path. The cracks in reality are already showing, and through them, Doom could step through at any moment. Imagine the emotional weight of the Avengers facing a villain who wears the face of the man they loved, the father Peter Parker mourned, the genius they all followed. That isn't just a battle, it's a tragedy. This theory redefines Strange's burden. When he lifted his finger in Endgame, we all thought it signaled the one path to victory. But what if it meant something else? What if it meant one delay, one temporary reprieve before the storm? Strange wasn't promising eternal hope. He was signaling a sacrifice to buy the multiverse one final chance before Doom's inevitable arrival. The storytelling potential is staggering. A villain born from our hero, a threat crafted from love and loss, is the ultimate escalation beyond Thanos or Kang. Doom wouldn't be an external invader, he would be a dark reflection from within, the shadow of Tony Stark stretched across the multiverse. So, when we ask why Doctor Strange truly let Tony die, the answer is clear. It wasn't just about defeating Thanos, it was about stopping Doom. It was about pruning the path before it blossomed into tyranny. But as the multiverse unfolds, we see the terrifying truth: you can prune branches, but you cannot stop destiny. And destiny, in some universe, calls Tony Stark by another name, Doom.